So now what we're going to be doing is going through and starting to use the first layer of the box model, which in this case is the content itself. So although not technically a layer of this invisible box, it's still a big part of layout and the shaping of things on your document, because the way you shape and, well, style your content is going to completely change how the rest of the box model is affected, your padding and your margin. So what we're going to be doing is going through and using some of these. And if you actually remember, right here, we have already used the two main features of shaping content, height and width. So we've already pretty much learned these properties, but I'm going to go through and do a couple more examples just so you can get the shape of things and how to use them. So first thing I want to talk about is the units that you should use. So usually on a page, the best way to do this is using pixels or some absolute unit for height, but then for width, use a relative unit such as VW or percentage. Now, we do this because although height is very, very hard to determine, responsively at least, they kind of stay the same as you move down. So the height is going to kind of stay consistent. The only problem is the width completely changes everything. So the width of devices is very different from place to place. So a phone would be quite a small width, whereas, a full screen TV would be a very wide width. So that's why you use relative units for width, is that you can keep it consistent while you can keep both of the values consistent while still using different units. So let's go through and actually use it on this image here. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and give this a class, or actually I'm going to give it an ID. So I'm going to give it an ID of about us image, just like that. All right. Now let's go ahead and select it here. I'm going to go hash about us image. Remember the ID selector. And now what we're going to do is go through and start adding our properties. So the first thing I'm going to add is the height. So I'm just going to make this a cool 300 pixels just to see how it is. And most of this is very experimental. You're not supposed to go through and change everything and, well, you are, but you're not supposed to go through and set everything to a constant value. So you're supposed to, play around, see what works. And then when you're familiar with it and what you want, you can leave it as it is. So there we go. We set the height. Now, obviously, this with the width of the image itself is always relative, but I'm going to go ahead and change it anyways. I'm going to go ahead and say the width is 60 VW. Now, you could always say 60%. It would pretty much be the same thing, but I'm going to go ahead and use VW here just to, actually, you know what? We have VW here already, so I'm going to go ahead and add percentage. There we go. Now, of course, you could use whichever unit you want. They're going to mean pretty much the same thing. Obviously apart from the different viewports and things like that, but they're pretty much the same for our purposes, so you can use whichever one you want. So there we go. We've changed it, and now if we go ahead and resize, you can actually go ahead and see that the width is going to be pretty much the same while the height stays constant. So one thing I want to talk about is a really cool feature that we can use in Chrome. And you can see that's a little bit weird there, but we'll worry about that later. It's a really cool feature that allows you to actually change the viewport of your Chrome window without actually having to use different devices. So if you go ahead and click on that icon, just right click anywhere on the page, click on inspect, and it's going to bring you here to this page. And you can actually select any device you want from the drop down menu and see how it would look on that device. So I can pretty much do whatever I want here. If I wanted to select an iPad, even an iPad Pro, you can actually see what it would look like on the device. So this is a really useful feature that you can use to make sure that your website works everywhere, instead of having to go and upload it somewhere and then view it on all those different devices. You can also select this responsive design, which I really like, because then you can change the size however you want, just like that you can see, and it will work perfectly. So yeah, that's great. And if you don't want to use these devices from this drop-down menu, you can actually go through and change the size here, which is really useful. So I'm going to go ahead and close this off now, and you can see that our website is looking good. Obviously, our image here looks quite weird, but like I said, it's all about experimentation. You're supposed to go through and see what works. And obviously, you don't have to use an absolute value. It's not set in stone, but you're supposed to go through and see what works for you, and from there you can set the values. So this is just kind of a little experimental thing to teach you how to use these features. But like I said, this website's all about, or this course is all about practicing and getting experience with this, so you can go through, check out the project files and play around with these values yourself. Really get a feel for how this works. So that's pretty much it for content resizing. It's very easy. There's only 2 properties you need to know, and pretty much the rest of the box model is also quite easy. But it's good that we learn it step by step so that we master every stage, and by the end of it, we'll really know how to master the layout and really manipulate our page in the best possible way. All right, let's move on.